My name is Louise, and I'm 56 years old. I've been a single mom since my husband passed away 15 years ago. Fishing has always been my escape, my peace. Last weekend, my son Nathan came to help me prepare for our annual fishing trip. While I was making tea, I noticed him slip something into my fishing gear box. I pretended not to see. Later, when he wasn't looking, I took that mysterious package and placed it in his car. Before I tell you what happened 30 minutes later, let me know where you're watching from and hit that subscribe button so you don't miss stories like this one that show how motherly instincts can sometimes lead us down unexpected paths. Life changed dramatically for me when I lost my husband Richard in a car accident 15 years ago. One minute we were planning our retirement, and the next I was planning a funeral. The only light that kept me going was our son Nathan, who was just 16 at the time. He became my emotional anchor, even though I should have been his. We developed a special bond during those difficult years. I watched him graduate high school, then college with honors, and finally land a prestigious job at a financial consulting firm in the city. He worked incredibly hard, often staying late at the office and working weekends to prove himself. His dedication paid off when he was promoted to senior analyst after just 3 years. 5 years ago, Nathan married Amelia, a kind-hearted kindergarten teacher with a warm smile. I adored her from the start. She brought a softness back to Nathan that I feared he had lost in the corporate world. They bought a small house in the suburbs, about an hour's drive from my rural home, where Richard and I had settled before his passing. Despite his busy schedule and new family responsibilities, Nathan never forgot our traditions. The most important one was our annual fishing trip to Lake Meridian, where Richard had taught Nathan to fish when he was just 7 years old. Every year in early June, we would spend a day at the lake catching bass and sharing stories. It was our way of keeping Richard's memory alive. This year's trip was particularly special as it marked 15 years since Richard's passing. I had been looking forward to it for months, cleaning my old fishing gear and buying new lures that I thought might appeal to the bass in the lake. But in the weeks leading up to our trip, I noticed something different about Nathan. During our weekly phone calls, he seemed distracted and anxious. His usual enthusiastic updates about work projects were replaced with vague comments and quick changes of subject. When I asked about Amelia, he would say everything was fine, but I could hear tension in his voice. 2 weeks ago, when they came over for Sunday dinner, I caught Nathan checking his phone constantly, stepping outside to take calls and whispering to Amelia with worried expressions. When I asked if everything was all right, he forced a smile and said he was just dealing with a difficult client at work. I didn't push him. After raising a child alone, you develop a sixth sense about when to probe and when to give space. But motherly instinct told me something wasn't right. Was his marriage in trouble? Was he having problems at work? Was he in some kind of financial trouble? My modest 3-bedroom farmhouse has stood the test of time, much like myself. The wraparound porch still holds the swing where Richard and I used to watch the sunset. The kitchen, with its outdated oak cabinets, has seen countless family meals. The fishing gear stored neatly in the shed behind the house represents years of memories on the water. When Nathan pulled into my gravel driveway that Saturday morning to help prepare for our fishing trip, I was filled with conflicting emotions. Joy at seeing my son, anticipation for our special day together, but also anxiety about whatever was troubling him. I stood on the porch watching his silver sedan kick up dust as he parked. He stepped out wearing jeans and a casual button-down shirt, his dark hair slightly longer than usual. He looked tired. There were shadows under his eyes that hadn't been there the last time I saw him. Yet he smiled warmly when he saw me and wrapped me in a tight hug. "Hi, Mom," he said, kissing my cheek. "Ready for our big fishing adventure tomorrow?" I patted his back, feeling the tension in his shoulders. "Been ready for weeks. You know how I get about our trips." Nathan laughed, but it didn't quite reach his eyes. "I brought some snacks and drinks for tomorrow," he said, lifting a cooler from his trunk. And I stopped by that bait shop you like to pick up some new lures. We carried everything into the house, chatting about inconsequential things. The weather forecast for tomorrow sunny, with a slight breeze, perfect fishing conditions. The new restaurant that opened in town, overpriced, but good food. His drive over traffic was light. Normal conversation, but beneath it all was an undercurrent of something unspoken. As I made us lunch, I caught Nathan checking his phone again, his brow furrowing as he read a text message. He quickly put the phone away when he noticed me watching. My heart ached seeing him so obviously troubled, but I reminded myself that at 31, he had the right to privacy even from his mother. After lunch, we decided to check our fishing gear to make sure everything was ready for the next day. I hoped that focusing on the familiar routine would help Nathan relax and maybe open up about whatever was bothering him. Little did I know that this simple activity would lead to a discovery that would shake my trust in my son to its core. The afternoon sun streamed through the kitchen windows as Nathan arrived, casting long shadows across my worn linoleum floor. He carried 2 grocery bags filled with sandwiches, chips, and various drinks for our fishing trip. I noticed how his eyes darted around the room before he set the bags down on the counter. His phone buzzed 3 times in quick succession while we unpacked the food, and each time he checked it with a tightened jaw. "Everything okay?" I asked, casually arranging sodas in the refrigerator. "Yeah, just work stuff," he replied too quickly. "They never leave me alone even on weekends." I nodded, pretending to accept his explanation. "Well, let's get your mind off work by checking our fishing gear. I pulled everything out of storage last week, but we should make sure nothing needs replacing." We headed to the shed behind the house where I keep all our fishing equipment. The familiar smell of wood metal and the lingering scent of fish greeted us as we entered the small space. I pulled the cord on the single overhead bulb, and light washed over the neatly organized shelves. "Looks like you've been keeping everything in good shape, Mom," Nathan said, running his hand over a fishing rod. "Dad would be proud." I smiled at the mention of Richard. "I try. Fishing was his passion, and now it's ours. Helps me feel close to him." We began the methodical process of checking each piece of equipment. Nathan tested the fishing lines for strength, while I organized lures by type and color. We examined the hooks for rust and sharpness, replaced a few that looked worn, and made sure our nets had no tears. "I'm going to make us some tea," I said, after we'd been working for about an hour. "Do you want some?" "Sure, that sounds good," Nathan replied, focused on untangling a particularly stubborn fishing line. From the kitchen window, I had a clear view of the shed. As I waited for the kettle to boil, I saw Nathan place the fishing line down and glance toward the house. Seemingly satisfied that I was occupied, he reached into his pocket and pulled out a small package wrapped in what looked like plastic. He looked around nervously, then quickly lifted the lid of my large fishing tackle box. My heart skipped a beat as I watched my son carefully place the package under some compartments inside, then close the lid with deliberate gentleness. I moved away from the window before he could notice me watching. My hands trembled slightly as I poured hot water over the tea bags. What had Nathan just hidden in my fishing gear? Why was he being so secretive? 1,000 possibilities ran through my mind, none of them good. When I returned to the shed, carrying 2 steaming mugs, I found Nathan leaning against the workbench, scrolling through his phone with a furrowed brow. He quickly pocketed it when he saw me. "Thanks, Mom," he said, accepting the tea. His fingers drummed nervously against the mug. We continued our preparations, but now I was hyper-aware of every movement Nathan made, every glance toward the tackle box, every notification that made his phone buzz. The easy conversation we'd been having earlier had been replaced by stilted small talk. "I need to use the bathroom," I announced, after a while setting down the fishing reel I'd been examining. I deliberately left the tackle box open, its contents visible. "Be right back." I took my time in the bathroom, giving Nathan plenty of opportunity to check on his hidden package if he wanted to. When I returned to the shed, I immediately noticed that the tackle box was now closed. Nathan was standing on the opposite side of the room examining a fishing rod with excessive interest. "Everything okay with the gear?" I asked, keeping my voice casual. "Yeah, all good," he replied, not quite meeting my eyes. "Listen, Mom, I just remembered I promised Amelia I'd help her with something this afternoon. Would you mind if we finished up tomorrow morning before we head to the lake?" I felt a pang of disappointment mixed with suspicion. "Of course not. What time do you think you'll be here?" "Early, probably around 6, he said, already moving toward the door. "We want to get to the lake while the fish are still active, right?" "Right," I agreed, following him out. "Give Amelia my love." Nathan hugged me quickly, promised to see me in the morning, and was in his car before I could ask any more questions. I watched him drive away, dust billowing behind his car, and felt an unfamiliar sense of distrust creeping into my heart. For the first time in my life, I was going to invade my son's privacy, and the thought made me sick with worry and shame. But I had to know what was in that package. I had to know what my son was hiding. After Nathan's car disappeared down the road, I stood frozen on my front porch for several minutes. The sun was beginning to set, casting long shadows across the yard. Birds called to each other from the trees, their cheerful sounds a stark contrast to the heaviness in my heart. Should I really go through with this? Was I prepared for what I might find? Taking a deep breath, I walked back to the shed, each step feeling heavier than the last. I pulled the string for the light, and the small space illuminated. The tackle box sat on the workbench where we'd left it, innocent looking, yet now somehow threatening. My hands trembled slightly as I unlatched the box and lifted the lid. Everything looked normal at first glance. Compartments filled with colorful lures, hooks of various sizes, weights, and line. But I knew what I was looking for. I carefully lifted the plastic tray that held the smaller items, revealing the storage space beneath. There it was, a small plastic bag about the size of my palm containing several white pills. My stomach dropped as I picked it up. The pills were round, unmarked, and definitely not something you'd get from a pharmacy. I'd seen enough TV shows and news reports to recognize what this probably was: some kind of illegal drug. I sat heavily on the stool beside the workbench, the bag feeling impossibly heavy in my hand. My mind raced with questions and emotions. Was my son using drugs? Was he selling them? How long had this been going on? Had I missed the signs? Was this why he'd been acting so strange lately? Nathan had always been such a good kid. Even during the turbulent teenage years after his father died, he'd never given me reason to worry about substance abuse. He'd focused on school-played sports, had a small group of close friends I knew and trusted. In college, he'd been serious about his studies, working part-time jobs to help with expenses, despite my assurances that I could manage. After graduation, he'd built a respectable career, married a wonderful woman, bought a house. The responsible son, the success story. Had it all been a facade? Or was the pressure of adult life, the demanding job, the mortgage perhaps, marital problems I didn't know about, pushing him toward destructive coping mechanisms? My eyes filled with tears as I looked at the bag in my hand. It felt like a physical representation of the distance that had grown between us. When had my son stopped confiding in me? When had he started keeping such dangerous secrets? I wiped my eyes and took a deep breath. I needed more information before jumping to conclusions. Taking out my phone, I searched online for images of prescription and illicit pills, trying to identify what Nathan had hidden. After scrolling through several websites, I found something similar. They could be stimulants or anti-anxiety medications sold without prescription, both illegal to possess without a doctor's order, both potentially dangerous. Still uncertain and needing another opinion, I called my friend Jane, who had worked as a nurse for 40 years before retiring. She'd seen it all during her time in the emergency room of our local hospital. "Jane, it's Louise," I said when she answered. "I need your help with something, but I need you to keep it confidential." "Of course, dear. What's going on?" Her voice was warm with concern. I found some pills, I said carefully. White round, no markings. I'm concerned about someone I care about. There was a pause. Louise, without seeing them, I can't tell you exactly what they are. There are many pills that fit that description, both legal and illegal. But if they have no pharmaceutical markings and weren't prescribed by a doctor, that's concerning. Are you saying you think someone close to you is using drugs? I swallowed hard. I don't know what to think, Jane. I never would have imagined it possible. People surprise us sometimes, and not always in good ways, Jane said gently. Have you noticed any behavior changes? Mood swings, unusual sleep patterns, financial problems. Some unusual behavior, yes. Secretiveness, anxiety. I didn't want to explicitly identify Nathan, though I suspected Jane could guess. Louise, my professional advice would be to have a direct conversation with this person. Express your concerns without accusations. If they are using drugs, they might need help, not judgment. And if there's an innocent explanation, you'll give them a chance to provide it. After thanking Jane and ending the call, I sat in the growing darkness of the shed, still holding the bag of pills. Jane's advice made sense, but something held me back from confronting Nathan directly. Perhaps it was fear of his reaction, or fear of confirmation that my son was involved with drugs. Or perhaps it was something deeper, an instinct that there was more to the story than what appeared on the surface. I placed the bag of pills back exactly where I'd found it, closed the tackle box and went inside. I needed time to think, to decide what to do next. As I prepared a simple dinner for myself, barely tasting the food, I wrestled with my options. Confront Nathan, call the police, pretend I never saw anything, talk to Amelia. Each possibility seemed to have equal potential for disaster. By the time I went to bed, I still hadn't decided on a course of action. But as I lay in the darkness staring at the ceiling, memories of Richard flooded my mind. What would he have done in this situation? The answer came to me clearly, as if he were right beside me, whispering in my ear. And suddenly I knew exactly what I needed to do. I barely slept that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Nathan's face. First as the innocent boy he'd been fishing with his father at Lake Meridian, then as the secretive man he'd become hiding something in my tackle box. By the time dawn broke, painting my bedroom walls with soft pink light, I had made my decision. Richard had always believed in natural consequences. Louise, he'd say, we can't protect Nathan from every mistake. Sometimes the best teaching comes from experiencing the results of your own actions. It had been hard for me to embrace this philosophy. My instinct was always to shield my son from pain. But Richard had been right more often than not. Nathan had learned valuable lessons by facing the consequences of his choices, whether it was failing a test he hadn't studied for, or losing a job he'd neglected. This situation was infinitely more serious than a failed test, but the principle remained the same. If Nathan was involved, with drugs protecting him, would only enable the behavior. He needed to understand the potential consequences. Legal troubles, damage to his career, strain on his marriage. And if by some chance there was an innocent explanation for the pills, then he shouldn't have hidden them in my fishing gear in the first place. My plan was simple. I would not confront Nathan directly. Instead, I would move the pills from my tackle box to his car, let him discover the transfer and wonder how they got there. Let him experience the anxiety of knowing someone had found his secret. Maybe that alone would be enough to make him reconsider whatever path he was on. With my mind made up, I got out of bed and began preparing for the day. I made Nathan's favorite breakfast, blueberry pancakes with maple syrup, crispy bacon and strong coffee. The familiar routine of measuring flour, cracking eggs, and mixing batter calmed my nerves. By the time I heard the crunch of tires on gravel at 6:05 a.m., the kitchen smelled like a Sunday morning from Nathan's childhood. Something smells amazing, Nathan said as he entered, looking more relaxed than he had yesterday. He'd shaved and changed into fresh clothes, jeans, and a light blue button-down shirt that brought out the color of his eyes. Eyes so like his father's. Blueberry pancakes, I replied, forcing a smile. Thought we deserved a good meal before our fishing adventure. We ate at the small kitchen table, sunlight streaming through the windows. Nathan told me about a new project at work, seemingly more open than he'd been recently. He mentioned Amelia's plans to start a garden in their backyard and asked my advice about which vegetables would be easiest for beginners. Throughout the conversation, he checked his phone occasionally, but not with the same anxiety as yesterday. Had I misjudged the situation? Was I overreacting to finding the pills? But then I remembered how carefully he'd hidden the bag, how nervous he'd looked doing it. No, something wasn't right. We should probably get going soon, Nathan said, glancing at his watch after we'd finished eating. The early bird catches the fish, right, Mom? I nodded, standing to clear the plates. Why don't you start loading the fishing gear into your car while I clean up? It'll save us some time. Sure thing, Nathan agreed easily. Where did we leave the tackle box? In the shed on the workbench, I replied, keeping my voice casual as I scraped leftover food into the trash. Don't forget the cooler with our drinks too. As soon as Nathan went outside, I quickly rinsed the dishes and set them in the sink. Then I peered through the window, watching as he crossed the yard to the shed. This was my chance. Nathan, I called out the back door. I can't find my keys. Could you come check if I left them in your car yesterday when you showed me those new lures? He turned, shading his eyes against the morning sun. Sure, Mom. Let me just put this in the car first. He held up the tackle box. I watched as he placed it in the trunk of his car, then headed back toward the house. As soon as he was inside, rummaging through the bowl where I kept my keys, I slipped out the back door. My heart pounded as I approached his car. The trunk was still open, the tackle box visible among the other fishing gear. With trembling fingers, I unlatched the box and lifted the plastic tray, revealing the small bag of pills exactly where I'd left it last night. I grabbed it and quickly closed the tackle box. Now for the second part of my plan. I opened the passenger door of Nathan's car and located the glove compartment. It seemed too obvious a hiding place, so instead, I lifted the center console where he kept spare change and sunglasses. I placed the bag underneath, making sure it was visible enough to be found, but not immediately obvious. As I closed the car door, I heard the screen door slam. Nathan was coming back outside. I hurried around to the trunk, pretending to be checking the fishing gear. Found your keys, Mom, Nathan called, jingling them in his hand. They were under the mail on the counter. I turned, forcing another smile. Thanks, honey. I'd lose my head if it wasn't attached. I gestured to the trunk. Everything loaded. We should hit the road. Nathan nodded, closing the trunk. All set. Want me to drive? Please, I replied, getting into the passenger seat with a strange sense of unreality. The bag of pills was now just inches from my leg, hidden in the center console. Did I really just do that? Was this the right decision? It was too late to second-guess myself now. As we pulled out of the driveway, Nathan turned on the radio to a classic rock station, Richard's favorite. Remember how Dad used to sing along to these songs on our fishing trips? He asked, smiling at the memory, like he knew all the words but always got them wrong. I replied, feeling a pang of loss. What would Richard think of our situation now? Would he approve of my actions? We drove through the countryside, fields of corn and wheat on either side of the road. Nathan seemed more talkative than yesterday, pointing out landmarks, reminiscing about past fishing trips. I responded automatically. Part of me engaged in the conversation, while another part remained acutely aware of what was hidden in the car. How's work been lately? I asked carefully as we turned onto the highway. You seemed stressed yesterday. Nathan's hands tightened slightly on the steering wheel. It's been challenging. There's a lot of pressure to perform, especially after my promotion last year. And there are some office politics I'd rather not deal with. Anyone in particular giving you trouble? He hesitated. There's this guy Frank, senior portfolio manager, been with the company for 20 years. He's got a lot of influence with upper management. Nathan checked his rearview mirror, then changed lanes to pass a slow-moving truck. He's been making things difficult for me and a few other newer managers. Difficult how? I pressed gently. Nathan shrugged. Just little things. Taking credit for our ideas in meetings, assigning impossible deadlines, making comments that undermine our authority with clients. He glanced at me. Nothing I can't handle, Mom. Don't worry. But there was something in his voice, a tension that suggested there was more to the story than he was telling me. Was this Frank somehow connected to the pills? Had he pressured Nathan into using drugs to keep up with the demanding pace at work? Or was it something else entirely? The questions burned in my mind as we continued our drive toward Lake Meridian. The closer we got to our destination, the more I questioned my plan. But it was too late to turn back now. The pills were hidden in the car. Whatever happened next was out of my hands. Lake Meridian sparkled under the morning sun as we pulled into the small gravel parking lot. A few other cars were already there. Fellow fishing enthusiasts eager for a peaceful day on the water. The familiar smell of pine trees and fresh water greeted us as we stepped out of the car, and for a moment I forgot about the pills and my suspicions. This place held so many happy memories. Looks like we got here at the perfect time, Nathan said, opening the trunk to retrieve our gear. Not too crowded yet. I nodded, helping him unload the fishing rods, tackle box, and cooler. We carried everything down to our favorite spot, a quiet cove on the eastern shore of the lake, partially shaded by a cluster of old oak trees. Richard had discovered this spot on our first family fishing trip, when Nathan was just 7 years old, declaring it the luckiest fishing hole in the whole lake. After Nathan caught his first bass there, we set up our equipment with the easy rhythm of people who have performed the same routine many times. I prepared the fishing rods while Nathan organized the tackle box, seemingly unaware that anything was missing from it. We baited our hooks, Nathan with a plastic worm, me with a small spinner bait, and cast our lines into the clear water. For a while we sat in companionable silence, the only sounds the gentle lapping of water against the shore and the occasional call of a bird overhead. The tension I'd felt earlier began to ease. This was how it should be between us. Peaceful, comfortable, no secrets. I've missed this, Nathan said softly, his eyes on the point where his line entered the water. Sometimes I think about moving back to a small town, leaving the rat race behind. Really? I glanced at him, surprised. I thought you loved your job in the city. He shrugged. I used to. Lately, though. He trailed off, then reeled in his line to check the bait. It's complicated. I was about to press him further when I felt a tug on my line. Oh, I think I've got something, I exclaimed, beginning to reel in slowly. Nathan set down his rod and picked up the net, ready to help. After a brief struggle, we landed a decent-sized bass, its scales gleaming silver and green in the sunlight. Nice catch, Mom, Nathan said, grinning, as he helped me remove the hook. Dad would be proud. Beginner's luck, I replied, though I felt a surge of pride as Nathan snapped a quick photo of me holding the fish before we released it back into the lake. After that, the fish seemed eager to bite. Within 30 minutes, we'd caught and released 3 more bass, 2 for Nathan and another for me. The familiar routine of casting, waiting, reeling in, and releasing brought back countless memories of fishing trips with Richard, then later just Nathan and me after Richard was gone. Despite my concerns about the pills and what they might mean, I found myself relaxing, enjoying this precious time with my son. Then Nathan's phone rang. He pulled it from his pocket, glanced at the screen, and his entire demeanor changed. The relaxed happiness vanished, replaced by a tense alertness. His face paled slightly. I need to take this, he said, setting down his rod. Work stuff. I'll just be a minute. He walked a short distance away, turning his back to me as he answered the call. Though I couldn't hear his words clearly, I could see his body language. Shoulders hunched, one hand gesturing agitatedly, head turning frequently, as if checking to see if anyone was listening. The call lasted less than 5 minutes, but when Nathan returned, he was a different person from the relaxed son who had been fishing beside me moments ago. Beads of sweat had formed on his forehead despite the mild temperature, and his hands trembled slightly as he picked up his fishing rod. "Everything okay?" I asked, watching him carefully. "No, actually," he replied, already beginning to reel in his line. "There's an emergency at work. I need to get back to the office right away. On a Sunday." I couldn't keep the skepticism from my voice. "Financial markets operate globally, Mom. Sometimes Sunday emergencies happen." His tone was defensive, almost snappish. Then, seeing my hurt expression, he softened. "I'm sorry. This isn't how I wanted our day to end. But it's really important." "I understand," I said, though I didn't. "Not really. What kind of work emergency caused that level of fear?" Because that's what I'd seen on Nathan's face when he took that call. Not annoyance or frustration, but genuine fear. We packed up our gear in record time, Nathan constantly checking his watch and urging me to hurry. As we loaded everything back into his car, I noticed his hands were still shaking. Whatever that call had been about, it had rattled him deeply. The drive back to my house was tense and silent. Nathan drove well above the speed limit, his eyes constantly flicking to the rearview mirror. I gripped the door handle partly from fear of his driving, and partly from the growing certainty that something was very wrong. "Nathan, please slow down," I said as we took a curve too fast. "Whatever's happening at work, it's not worth risking an accident." "Sorry," he muttered, easing off the accelerator slightly. I need to get back as soon as possible." When we finally pulled into my driveway, Nathan barely waited for the car to stop before jumping out to unload my fishing gear. He placed everything hastily on the porch, gave me a quick distracted hug, and was heading back to his car before I could even thank him. "Nathan!" I called after him, suddenly afraid this might be the last time I'd see him, if whatever he was involved in was as dangerous as it seemed. "I love you. Whatever's going on, you can tell me. I'll help you." He paused, one hand on the car door, and for a moment I thought he might confide in me. But then he shook his head. "Everything's fine, Mom. Just work stress. I'll call you tomorrow, okay?" And with that, he was in his car and backing out of the driveway. I stood on the porch watching him leave, feeling like I'd just made the biggest mistake of my life by moving those pills. What if he was in real trouble? What if my actions had somehow made things worse, but it was too late for second thoughts? The plan was in motion, and all I could do now was wait to see what happened next. I didn't even have time to bring my fishing gear into the house. Nathan's car had barely disappeared down the road when I heard another vehicle approaching. The sound of tires on gravel made me turn, expecting to see a neighbor, or perhaps Nathan returning for something he'd forgotten. Instead, a white police cruiser with blue stripes pulled into my driveway, lights flashing, but sirens silent. My heart seemed to stop, then restart with painful intensity. Had someone reported Nathan's erratic driving? Or was this about something else entirely? Something connected to the pills I'd moved from my tackle box to his car. Two officers emerged from the cruiser, a tall older man with salt and pepper hair, and a younger woman with her dark hair pulled back in a tight bun. They approached me with the measured steps of people who are alert but not yet alarmed. "Mrs. Louise Caldwell?" the male officer asked. I nodded, my mouth suddenly dry. "Yes, that's me." He touched the brim of his cap respectfully. "I'm Officer Daniels and this is Officer Rivera. We're following up on a call about suspicious activity in this area. Have you noticed anything unusual today?" Before I could answer, the sound of another car approaching drew our attention. To my horror, Nathan's silver sedan was coming back up the driveway. He must have forgotten something after all. The timing couldn't have been worse. I watched as Nathan's car slowed upon seeing the police cruiser. For a moment, I thought he might back up and leave, but instead, he parked beside the police car and got out, his expression a mixture of confusion and alarm. "Mom," he called, walking toward us. Everything okay? Officer Daniels turned to look at Nathan, his posture subtly shifting to one of greater alertness. Sir, could I ask who you are? Nathan Caldwell. This is my mother's house. Nathan's eyes flicked between the officers and me. What's going on? We're just following up on a report, Officer Rivera said smoothly. Nothing to be concerned about. Is this your vehicle, Mr. Caldwell? She gestured to Nathan's sedan. Yes, Nathan replied, a note of wariness entering his voice. Would you mind if we took a quick look inside? Officer Daniels asked. Standard procedure when we're investigating reports in the area. Nathan stiffened. Do you have a warrant? The atmosphere changed instantly. Officer Daniels' friendly demeanor cooled. No, sir, we don't. But your reluctance to cooperate raises some concerns. Is there something in your vehicle you don't want us to see? I just know my rights. Nathan responded, but I could see beads of sweat forming on his forehead. And I don't consent to a search without a warrant. Officer Rivera stepped closer to Nathan's car, peering through the windows. Sir, I can see what appears to be drug paraphernalia in plain view through your window. That gives us probable cause to search the vehicle. My breath caught. Drug paraphernalia. There had only been pills in that bag, nothing else. Unless there was something more in Nathan's car that I didn't then know about. Nathan's face drained of color. That's not possible. There's nothing like that in my car. Step back from the vehicle, sir. Officer Daniels instructed, his hand moving to rest on his holstered weapon. Officer Rivera will conduct a search based on probable cause. I watched in horrified silence as Officer Rivera put on gloves and began searching Nathan's car. She started with the glove compartment, then moved to check under the seats. When she reached the center console and lifted the lid, her expression changed. Officer Daniels, she called, I found something. She held up the small plastic bag containing the white pills I had placed there earlier. My stomach dropped. This was my fault. I had wanted Nathan to find the pills and realize someone knew his secret. Not for him to be caught by the police. Those aren't mine, Nathan said immediately, his voice rising with panic. I don't know how they got there. Officer Daniels took the bag from Officer Rivera, examining the pills inside. Mr. Caldwell, I'm placing you under arrest for possession of a controlled substance. You have the right to remain silent. Anything you say can and will be used against you in a court of law. As the officer continued reading Nathan his rights, I stood frozen on my porch, unable to believe how quickly the situation had escalated. Nathan's eyes found mine filled with confusion and a silent plea for help. I opened my mouth to confess what I'd done, to explain that I had moved the pills, but no words came out. Officer Daniels handcuffed Nathan, while Officer Rivera continued searching the car. Nathan didn't resist, but he kept repeating, They're not mine, I don't know how they got there. Mom, Nathan called to me as Officer Daniels led him toward the police cruiser. Call Amelia. Tell her what happened. And call Jeff Lawson. His number is in my phone contacts. I nodded numbly, finally finding my voice. I will. It'll be okay, Nathan. But would it? How could this possibly be okay? I had tried to teach my son a lesson, and instead had gotten him arrested. As the police cruiser drove away, with my son in the back seat, I sank down onto the porch steps, overwhelmed by the unintended consequences of my actions. Officer Rivera stayed behind to finish searching Nathan's car and take my statement. I told her I knew nothing about any drugs, that my son had just been helping me prepare for our fishing trip. Each word felt like a betrayal, but I couldn't bring myself to admit what I'd done. Not yet. Not until I understood what was really going on. After Officer Rivera left, promising to have someone contact me about retrieving Nathan's car, I went inside and called Amelia. Her voice was sleepy when she answered. She had been taking a Sunday afternoon nap, but she became fully alert as soon as I explained what had happened. Pills, that doesn't make any sense, she said, confusion evident in her voice. Nathan doesn't take anything stronger than Tylenol. He won't even drink more than one beer if he's driving. I know, I replied, guilt churning in my stomach. But the police found something in his car. They've taken him to the station. I'll be right there, Amelia said decisively, and I'll call Jeff Lawson on my way. He's our family lawyer. He'll know what to do. After hanging up, I sat at my kitchen table, the events of the day replaying in my mind. The fishing trip that had started so normally, Nathan's mysterious phone call, the pills I'd moved from my tackle box to his car, the police arriving at the exact wrong moment, my son being handcuffed and taken away. What had I done? And more importantly, what was I going to do now to fix it? The county jail was a stark, imposing building of grey concrete and metal bars. I'd driven past it hundreds of times, but had never imagined I would one day be walking through its doors to visit my son. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead as I signed in at the reception desk, my hand trembling slightly as I wrote my name. It was the morning after Nathan's arrest. Amelia had arrived at my house within an hour of my call, her face pale with worry, but her manner calm and decisive. She'd immediately contacted Jeff Lawson, who had represented Richard's construction business years ago and was now a successful criminal defense attorney. Jeff had gone to the police station right away, but hadn't been able to secure Nathan's release. The judge wouldn't set bail until morning. Now, following a guard through sterile corridors, I tried to prepare myself for facing Nathan. What would I say? How could I explain what I'd done without losing his trust forever? The guilt was like a physical weight pressing down on me. The visiting area was a large room divided by a glass partition with phones on either side for communication. I sat in a plastic chair waiting anxiously until Nathan was brought in. The sight of him in an orange jumpsuit made my heart clench. He looked tired and disheveled, with dark circles under his eyes, but he managed a small smile when he saw me. We picked up our phones simultaneously. "Mom?" he said, his voice slightly distorted through the receiver. "Did you call Amelia and Jeff?" "Yes, right away," I assured him. "Jeff is working on getting you released today. He seems optimistic." Nathan nodded, rubbing his face with his free hand. "Good. That's good." A heavy silence fell between us, filled with unasked questions and unspoken truths. Finally, I couldn't bear it any longer. "Nathan," I began, my voice cracking slightly, "I need to tell you something. Those pills they found in your car? They're not mine, Mom," he interrupted, leaning forward intently. "I swear to you, I don't know how they got there." I took a deep breath. "I know they're not yours, at least not exactly, because I'm the one who put them there." Nathan's expression transformed from earnest insistence to utter confusion. What are you talking about?" The words stumbled out of me then. How I'd seen him hide something in my tackle box, how I'd discovered the pills, how I'd decided to teach him a lesson by moving them to his car. As I spoke, Nathan's expression changed from confusion to understanding to something like horror. "Mom," he said, when I finally fell silent, "those pills weren't drugs. At least not recreational drugs. They were evidence." It was my turn to be confused. "Evidence? Evidence of what?" Nathan glanced around, then lowered his voice. "Frank, my colleague I told you about. He's been running a prescription drug operation through the firm, using client accounts to launder money using the firm's couriers to distribute pills. I've been gathering evidence for months. I felt like the floor had dropped out from under me. But why hide it in my tackle box? I was afraid to keep it at home or at work. Frank has connections everywhere. I needed somewhere safe until I could take everything to the SEC and the police." He ran a hand through his hair in frustration. "That package had pills I'd intercepted from one of Frank's deliveries. I was going to get them tested to prove they weren't pharmaceutical grade." The full implications of what I'd done hit me like a physical blow. "Oh, Nathan, I'm so sorry. I thought you were in trouble. I was trying to help in my own misguided way." "The call at the lake," Nathan continued. "That was from Frank. Someone had tipped him off that I was collecting evidence. He threatened me, said he knew what I was doing and that I'd better back off if I knew what was good for me and Amelia. And then you were arrested with the very evidence you were collecting." I finished feeling sick. "Nathan, This is all my fault. I'll tell the police exactly what happened. I'll clear your name. Nathan shook his head quickly. No, Mom, not yet. If Frank finds out those pills were confiscated, he'll destroy all the remaining evidence and probably flee the country. His operation is huge. We're talking millions of dollars. But you're in jail, I protested. I can't just leave you here. Jeff will get me out today, Nathan said with more confidence than I felt. And then we need to move quickly. The police taking those pills might actually work in our favor if we play this right. I wasn't sure what he meant by that, but I nodded, willing to follow his lead. What do you need me to do? For now, don't tell anyone about moving the pills. Not even Amelia or Jeff. As far as everyone is concerned, those pills were planted in my car, possibly by Frank or one of his associates. Nathan leaned closer to the glass. Once I'm out, I'll need your help putting together the rest of my evidence. I've been keeping records, transactions, dates, names. Some of it is at home, some of it is hidden elsewhere. Of course, I agreed immediately. Anything you need. The guard announced that our time was up. Nathan and I both stood still, holding our phones. Mom, Nathan said quickly, I don't blame you for what happened. You thought you were protecting me. That's what parents do. Tears filled my eyes. I should have trusted you. Should have asked you directly about what I saw. And I should have trusted you enough to tell you what was going on, Nathan replied softly. We'll fix this together, okay? As the guard led Nathan away, I remained standing, the phone still pressed to my ear, even though the line was dead. My son was involved in something far more dangerous than I had imagined, and my well-intentioned meddling had complicated everything. But at least now I knew the truth, and I would do everything in my power to help Nathan bring Frank to justice and clear his name. Walking out of the jail into the bright morning sunlight, I felt a curious mixture of dread and determination. The situation was grave, but for the first time since finding those pills, I felt like I understood what was happening. And understanding was the first step toward making things right. Over the next 3 weeks, life took on the surreal quality of a spy novel. Nathan was released on bail the day after his arrest thanks to Jeff Lawson's legal expertise and Amelia's willingness to put up their house as collateral. But his troubles were far from over. He was suspended from his job pending investigation, his reputation tarnished by rumors of drug possession. Frank, meanwhile, continued his operations at the firm, seemingly untouchable. But beneath the surface, we were working tirelessly to build a case against Frank and clear Nathan's name. Our dining room table became command central, covered with financial records, phone logs, and notes detailing the prescription drug operation. Nathan had been meticulous in his documentation, tracking suspicious transactions and communications for months. Amelia proved to be an unexpected ally. As a kindergarten teacher, she had organizational skills that brought order to our chaotic collection of evidence. She created timelines and spreadsheets, connecting dots we hadn't even noticed. More importantly, she never once doubted Nathan's innocence, even before I confessed to moving the pills. That confession hadn't been easy. After a week of working together, the guilt became too much to bear. One evening after Nathan and Amelia had gone home, I called them and asked them to return. Sitting in my living room, hands clasped so tightly my knuckles were white, I told them everything. How I'd found the pills, moved them to Nathan's car, and then been too shocked and frightened to speak up when the police arrived. I expected anger, especially from Amelia. Instead, she got up from the couch, came over to my chair, and hugged me. You were trying to protect your son, she said simply. That's what mothers do. Nathan's response was equally gracious. Mom, I put you in an impossible position by hiding those pills without explanation. And honestly, if our situations were reversed, I might have done the same thing. Their forgiveness was a gift I didn't deserve, but desperately needed. It renewed my determination to help make things right. The break in the case came from an unexpected source. Jeff Lawson had connections in the district attorney's office and learned that the pills found in Nathan's car had been tested. They contained a dangerous mixture of fentanyl and other substances far stronger than what was being prescribed legally. This matched Nathan's suspicion that Frank was selling counterfeit prescription medications, putting countless lives at risk. Armed with this information and the extensive documentation Nathan had gathered, Jeff arranged a meeting with the FBI, who had jurisdiction over large-scale drug operations crossing state lines. Two agents came to my house on a Tuesday afternoon, spending hours reviewing our evidence and taking statements. They were particularly interested in the financial records showing how client accounts were being used to launder money. "This is impressive work, Mr. Caldwell," the senior agent said as she closed her notebook. "We've been aware of suspicious activities in several financial firms, but hadn't connected them to this particular operation." "What happens now?" I asked, anxiety making my voice higher than normal. "We'll open a formal investigation," she replied. "But we need to move carefully. If Mr. Hudson suspects he's under federal investigation, he could destroy evidence or flee." "What about the charges against my son?" I pressed. The agent exchanged looks with her colleague. "We'll speak with the DA about having those charges dropped in exchange for Mr. Caldwell's cooperation. But it might take some time. We may need him to maintain his current status while we build our case." It wasn't the immediate resolution we'd hoped for, but it was progress. After the agents left, Nathan, Amelia, Jeff, and I sat in my kitchen, drinking coffee and processing what had just happened. "So I remain the disgraced employee while Frank continues as if nothing's wrong," Nathan said, a hint of bitterness in his voice. "For now," Jeff agreed, "but not for long. The FBI doesn't mess around with cases like this, especially when it involves counterfeit medications. They'll move as quickly as they can." Amelia placed her hand over Nathan's. "We can handle a few more weeks. The truth will come out." I looked at my son, still suspended from his job, still facing criminal charges, his reputation in tatters, and marveled at his resilience. Despite everything, he hadn't lost faith that justice would prevail. In that moment, I had never been prouder of him. The FBI moved faster than any of us expected. Just 10 days after our meeting at 6 a.m. on a Friday morning, Frank Hudson was arrested at his luxury apartment. Simultaneous raids were conducted at the firm's offices and several other locations connected to the drug operation. The news exploded across local media, with Frank's arrest described as part of a major crackdown on a sophisticated prescription drug ring. By noon, the district attorney had called Jeff to discuss dropping the charges against Nathan. By evening, Nathan's employer had reached out apologizing for the suspension and inviting him to return to work immediately. The nightmare was finally ending. That night, Nathan, Amelia, and I celebrated with a simple dinner at my house. As we raised our glasses in a toast, Nathan looked at me with an expression I recognized from his childhood. The same look he'd given me when I'd bandaged his skinned knees or checked under the bed for monsters. "I couldn't have done this without you, Mom," he said quietly. "Both of you," he added, including Amelia. "When everything was falling apart, you believed in me. That meant everything." "Family stands together," I replied, my voice thick with emotion. "Your father would be so proud of you, Nathan, not just for exposing Frank's operation, but for doing it the right way with integrity." Later, after Nathan and Amelia had gone home, I sat on my porch swing looking up at the stars. The same stars Richard and I had gazed at on summer nights like this one. I could almost feel him beside me, his arm around my shoulders, his voice in my ear. "You did good, Louise," I imagined him saying. "Not everything went according to plan, but you never gave up." I smiled at the night sky, feeling a peace I hadn't experienced in weeks. My misguided attempt to protect Nathan by moving those pills had nearly destroyed him. But in the end, our love for each other and our determination to find the truth had led us through the darkness into light. Sometimes the greatest mistakes lead to the most important discoveries, not just about the situation at hand, but about ourselves and those we love. I had discovered that Nathan was even stronger and more principled than I had known. He had discovered that he could lean on family when his own strength wasn't enough. And we had both discovered that trust once broken could be rebuilt even stronger than before. As mothers, we never stop trying to protect our children, even when they're grown. Sometimes we get it right, sometimes we get it wrong. But as long as love is at the heart of our actions, there's always a path forward. That's the lesson I would carry with me from this extraordinary chapter in our lives. What about you? Have you ever tried to protect someone you love and had it backfire? Or has someone's misguided attempt to help you led to unexpected complications? Share your story in the comments below. And if this tale of motherly love and misunderstanding resonated with you, please like and subscribe for more stories about family bonds tested by life's challenges. Thank you for listening. And remember, even our mistakes can lead to growth when we face them with honesty and courage.